Right, I think that's recording now. I think.
Yeah, I was saying about the school being demolished and remembering my first days at school when I was aged 3, already reading, and I was put in the baby class first, which we now call reception. But the baby class was used in the evenings as a science lecture room, so it had rows of steps and desks, and I was sat right at the top of this, and you looked right down to all the desks, and at the bottom was what seemed to be a little old lady with white hair pushing and into a swing, and the good children were allowed to turn on the swing. That was my introduction to the baby class. And I'd been put next to a girl called Doreen, who had pale blue eyes and white curly hair and wore glasses. And she was supposed to be my friend, because I'd lived next door to her when I was about 6 months old. So I had no idea who she was, because we moved soon after that, and I'd forgotten all about that place, because at 6 months old you don't remember things, do you? So I didn't like Doreen because I didn't want her to be my friend. And then I don't remember any more about the baby class, probably because I could read, except for one thing. I had a big book, Mother Goose it was called, which was children's stories and poems, and Mother had lent it to take to school to read at story time. But when she came to get it back, the woman wouldn't let her have it. She said, "I've no proof that it's yours, there's no name in this." And Mother said, "Yes, but if it was school, it would have the school stamp in." And she wouldn't let her have it. And to this day, I feel that injustice, that Mother's book was stolen by this little white-haired old lady. I don't suppose she was that old. And then I went into the next class, and I can remember being the reading monitor. This was class 1, when I'd be about 4 maybe. And I had to collect up the reading books and put them on the windowsill. We didn't have book corners with hundreds of books in. There were just these little piles of book 1, book 2, book 3, book 4. And you sat in a group and you led the group round, and when they'd finished reading their bit, you put them back on the windowsill for someone else. And the only other thing, or the 2 or 3 things I remember about infant school, shows how different it was compared with now, was being the star of the Christmas concert. And I was the fairy queen, and I had a little halo of tinsel and some little wings, and I had to sit on a little throne, and I couldn't find my handkerchief, so I had to stamp my foot and wave my wand and tell everybody to go and look for it, and they all scuttered around and couldn't find it, and I did very well. And then at the end you got up to take a bow, and everybody in this play pointed to the seat, because I'd been sitting on this handkerchief all the time. And of course all the mums and dads burst out laughing, and I was so astonished at being laughed at that I burst into tears and ran off the stage.
Oh dear.
Yeah, and then I used to get nosebleeds, and when I got a nosebleed, the head teacher would put a cold key down my back and make me lie down near her desk until it had stopped. What a cold key down your back was supposed to do, I don't know, but that was a treatment.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, we had an occasion where we were learning road safety, and the hall was decked out with Belisha beacons, which were a new thing, and crossings and stop signs, and you were supposed to go around in a little group doing all the right things. It was very confusing. And then chanting tables. I think we got up to 7 times or something in the infants. Things on the walls with the tables, and you had to chant them. And everything was done on the blackboard. There were no textbooks or exercise books. Then you went into the big school, which was next door. Each main hall had a raised dais on which was the head teacher's desk, where they sat most of the day keeping an eye on what was going wrong in the classrooms which went round the hall, all facing onto it. And they all had movable walls so that you could open it all up into a big space. So behind the headmaster's desk in the junior school was a list of the 10 Commandments writ large in script. Thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not blah blah blah, right down to honour thy father and thy mother at the bottom. And he used to go through these and preach at us every morning. And he explained most of the things, like killing and bearing false witness, but he never said anything about the adultery one. He didn't explain that one. But coveting and stealing and killing, that was all in it. And because it was wartime by then, because by 7, the war had started when I was 7, all the songs were very sort of martial. And we used to things like Onward Christian Soldiers. And as all the little boys wore clogs with iron shod soles, and they little feet stamping up and down on the floor when they were singing Onward Christian Soldiers, marching us to war. And I thought, heaven help anybody if they caught them. And we didn't have PE or games. The boys had gardening, and they did vegetables in the school garden, which nobody ever got. And the girls did knitting. And we knit little squares to sew into blankets for unfortunates who needed them. That's how we learned to knit. And down one side of the hall was obviously the A stream children, and down the other side were the others. So all our side went on in peace and quiet, everybody learning things and doing things. And all down the other side there was poor Miss Patterson tearing her hair out and shrieking away. And one poor little red-haired boy, I remember him, I think his name was Billy or something like that. He used to come crying out of the headmaster's office every afternoon because he'd had the cane for being naughty. And I think he was just a special needs child. But in those days there weren't special needs children, they were just naughty children and slow children. And this poor lad was both. I can't remember much more about that, except we took the scholarship exam for the grammar schools when you were 11, which turned into the 11 plus later on. And once you'd done that, you weren't part of the school anymore. If you'd passed your scholarship, you were taken out as a little group and you sat in the hall and did all your lessons there, because junior school started earlier in September than the grammar schools did. And I was called a young optional because I wasn't 11. A young optional, you know. And there really wasn't much to do about that at all. Every class we had, we did have singing without any musical accompaniment, just a tonic solfa thing on the board and the teacher pointing to those. She had to do do, re, mi and all that sort of stuff. And we learned most of the well-known folk songs of each country in Britain: Scottish, Irish, English, Welsh. And later on I found out that your dad had the same. So it must have been a programme that they had to follow.
Around the country?
Around the country. Everybody had to learn these folk songs. I don't know what else I can say about it. I know we used to put blotting paper round jam jars on the inside, fill it with sawdust, and push beans down between the blotting paper and the glass and water it, and we would watch these beans grow and the roots come out and the shoots go up. And then they would disappear. And I think they must have gone in the school garden to be grown on into beans, but we never saw any of them.
Excellent.
And of course there were separate playgrounds for boys and girls with a great high wall between them, about 6 foot high it seemed. A covered area for when it rained, and outside toilets, And if you needed toilet paper, you were only allowed to take one sheet from the roll.
One sheet.
And in winter they all got frozen up, so you can imagine. And the boys were able to climb up over their wall and peep over at the girls sitting on the toilets because there weren't any doors on them. So you only went if you had to. And I used to find I was usually caught short just passing on to Janie's. And I used to pop in there before I got home. Separate playgrounds. So all our PE really was just ordinary playtime play. But we had skipping ropes, we had balls, and we had all sorts of singing games for balls and for skipping, traditional, songs, and everybody knew them, although nobody had ever taught them. You just sort of caught on from everybody else, I suppose.
How was it? How did you grow up? What sort of house did you grow up in when you were younger?
Well, as far as having pieced together things, I was born in my Auntie Janie's house because Dad and Mum lived there for a little while till they qualified for a waiting place for a council house, apparently. And there was just a street, a more industrial street with a park at the top called Athol Street. And Clifford was born there, so we must have lived there a couple of years. And we moved to Rome Avenue on Stoops Estate, which was really lovely then, because they'd only 2 or 3 years old, those houses. And we moved there when I was about 3, and I spent the rest of my life there till I got married. And it was a little cul-de-sac with a sort of ginnel, which you call a drang here, at the bottom. And at the bottom of the drang you could get the chip shop, the paper shop, the greengrocers and the grocers. So all your daily shopping was within easy reach. Across the road was a brook, which we called Brook, where you could catch tadpoles and guddle about in this little stream. And next to the paper shop was what we called a spare field from which the brook flowed through, and you could get into that from one of Clifford's friends' houses, garden. And we used to play in there when nobody was looking, which was nice. So this estate was really it was Burnley's answer to the Garden City, apparently, when it was built. We all had nice gardens, front and back, nice little railings, electric lights. Mother was very pleased with electric lights, because the aunties all had gas light in their old houses, and where she lived they just had oil lamps before she moved to Burnley. And a concrete floor in the kitchen, which she thought was lovely. She scrubbed it every week because it's much better than flagstones. And she was very proud of it. But the thing is, she could have bought her own house. She had enough money to buy her own house. And I remember going up to a playing field next to Auntie Alice's, which had some swings and stuff, and it was near enough to walk. And she said, nearly bought that house, semi-detached, Victorian, very nice, middle class. I said, oh, it's lovely, Mum, why did you buy it? Well, when your dad saw it, he said, Tilly won't stop in Bread Street when she sees that. And Mother said, what? And he said, well, she wants to come and live with us. So Mother scotched it, if you pardon the colloquial phrase of the time, and instead that she spent her money on furnishing the council house when she got it. But it was less than £200. And I think she had more than that. She could have afforded it, and I wish she bought it, but there she didn't. She didn't want Auntie Tilly living with them. Which is odd, because Bread Street was the end of an industrial street down in the town, and it only had sort of outside privy in the backyard, and gas lights, and one cold running tap in the kitchen. one of these old-fashioned ranges with a fire and a thing where you boiled the water with a tap to get the hot water out, no hot water system or anything. And they always lived in the kitchen as well. I suppose it was because you could only have one fire. You wouldn't have a special fire in the parlour except Christmas time. I've wandered off the subject.
Yeah, I mean, did you have to share a bedroom when you were...
Oh yes. When we lived in Rome Avenue, of course it was just me and Clifford to start with. That was all right. So Mum and Dad had the main room with their posh bedroom suite, and I suppose I had one.
Was it a 3-bedroom, was it?
3-bedroom house. 2 like small doubles and a large double. But then Maureen and Mavis came along, which was hutch everybody up. And then Maurice and Dennis came along. And then it got a bit complicated. Saved by the fact that while Dad was in the army, all the boys shared the main bedroom. Maureen and Mavis had the 3rd one, and Mum and I shared the other. And when Dad came back from the army, Mother said, well, I haven't got to have any more children. The midwife says 6 is enough, and then 7th will be one too many and probably kill me. So she stayed sharing with me, and Dad had to share with the boys, all in the front room, which solved that little problem. But it was a nice house, I suppose, for that time. Single glazing, of course. Metal windows, which got condensation on and rusted because of it. Fire in the living room, a modern sort of ovens arrangement. There was a fire with a back boiler, and at the left-hand side an oven and a little warming oven. Mother never used it for cooking, but she used to keep our pyjamas and slippers warm in the bottom one, and all the kindling and stuff to light the fire in the top one. So that was okay. And in the kitchen she just had a very old gas cooker which you could smell when you came into the house, and a boiler to boil your washing, and a dolly tub and a pot sink. Next to that was a bathroom which had the bath and a hand basin in, but the toilet was outside still, even in these modern houses. There was a little back porch with the toilet by one side of the back door, and the coal cellar, which was just half height, so you banged your head getting the coal out at the other. And above the coal cellar was the larder, which was just half height again from inside, so you had to scramble up to get into it, to get anything out, or get a chair or a ladder or something. That wasn't very good. But there we go, that's what we had. And then they put an air raid shelter in the back garden, which dug down to the clay subsoil, and so it filled up with water to about a foot whenever it rains, and covered it up with earth, and that was half the garden gone, at least a quarter of it. And the rest we had some fruit bushes and a dug over plot which occasionally had Brussels sprouts in it, or whatever Mother could manage to get hold of.
How did you find school, I mean, at home, dealing with homework or learning when you had to share a room with all the other children? Did you find it easy to concentrate?
Well, initially you just cleared the table and got on with it at the dining table, which was in the living room like this. It was all one room. I don't remember having too much difficulty with homework, but then when it did get more complicated at high school, I had to take it upstairs, and if it was cold, our room had a little gas fire in it which I was allowed to switch on if it was very cold, and so I did most of my homework upstairs. And I suppose the others did the same, because they all followed on. I don't ever remember Clifford doing any homework, really. By the time I'd finished doing homework and gone to art school, I was out of touch with actually what they were doing, but I suppose they did the same.
Did you find your parents did they have a lot of encouragement in making you maintain work or direction or?
Oh, Dad took no interest whatsoever. That was Mother's department.
Right.
Your mother got on with that. All she did was make sure we'd done it. She was too busy, I suppose, to do any extra input.
Mm.
No, she took the view that you'd been given your lessons, you'd got your references, you'd been told what to do, and it was up to you to do it. She had a motto, which occasionally I think was a bit of a cop-out really, because it was never do for a child what a child can do for itself, which was part of the Montessori teaching program which she'd done. And I thought, yeah, that's fine. But it doesn't mean that you've just got to do it.
Mm.
There are times when you would rather somebody else helped you out with it. But it makes you more self-reliant, I suppose, that's the point.
Mm.
And I don't remember, no. The only thing she did was she bought me a piano tutor when I was about 7. It was Townsend's piano tutor. And she put it on the piano, which we had a piano, and opened it at the page which gave you the names of the notes and which notes sat on which lines and spaces. She said, you learn that page. So I learned that page. I said, done it. Right, now, what that means is, these are the spaces, and these are the lines, and that's, you go up and down and follow the notes and you let the scale do it. So I did the next page, and when I'd done the next page, I did the next page and the next page. I'll show you the tutor, I've still got a copy. It's not the original one, but it's the same. Until I'd gone right through the whole lot. And all I got then was an occasional, that's wrong, from the kitchen, or that's too fast, from the kitchen, or that's too loud. But the joke is that the piano was a wooden frame piano which needed regular tuning, and ours was never tuned, and it had several notes that didn't work because the sticks had broken. And I, at the age of possibly 10 by then, undid all the front of the piano, took out all the broken sticks from the important notes and replaced them with ones from the ones I didn't use at the top and bottom. So you had these thick hammers where it should have been playing a treble and vice versa, you know. But at least it worked a bit. And it was a beautiful piano with inlaid flowers. I think it had thistle, rose and shamrock entwined in different colours. And it was by Collard and Collard manufacturers, it said on the lid. And on it at Christmas sat the little Christmas tree. And that had candles which we lit Christmas Eve and sang something, probably Silent Night I could think. I still got some of the decorations from it. A few, and I gave Alison a few, and I don't know whether I gave you any or whether I still got them to give to you later in my bequest.
Maybe. Maybe. I don't remember them. So
you used to have a little red glass trumpet which you could blow and it would make a...
Oh yes, yeah, I know the glass trumpets, yeah. I think I broke one and I was about 7 in my mouth.
Yeah.
You got angry because I had glass in my mouth.
Yeah, but we still got it.
Yeah. So,
and of course, when I come to think of it, I don't think we needed PE lessons.
no.
Because I think it was about 1.5 miles to school. And you usually ran all the way. There was a field which was up and down and pavements before and after. And in winter, I can still feel hailstones on my knees in the winter, the cold sting. And the burning feel from your hands when you got to school and you sat on the pipes in the cloakroom, put your hands, because they were big round pipes, 4 inches or so, central heating pipes. You mustn't sit on the pipes, you'll melt your backbone. So we were really quite tough, I suppose. We got all this daily exercise, and nobody took us to school. apart from at the beginning when I was very little, you went on your own. And then when Clifford was big enough and I was 7 and he was 5, I took him. And then when the other children were bigger, you just went in a little procession. But there were no grown-ups. That was it all at work.
When you left school, did you have an idea of what you wanted to do for a career or what you wanted?
Oh, well, when we got round to the 6th form, we had careers advice. And we were given the options of considering nursing, teaching, or anything else which was of service to the community. Doctors if you were clever, but it was mostly teaching and nursing. So we visited a hospital, I think, and we visited a school, and unfortunately it was a school with a special needs class by then, in which was one of my little cousins that I never knew, and he stood up at the back and said, that's my cousin, and there's this little prim high school girl wishing she could disappear into the floor, you see, because we had this special needs cousin. I think his name was Billy, which just about sums him up. I think he's still living, but most of them have gone, Billy. But that was all you were offered, nursing or teaching. But when it came to it, one of the girls went to be a telephonist. And she ended up marrying a South African and went and had a house with servants in it. So she was all right. Her name was Shirley Deirdre Mullen. And then we had someone, Barbara somebody, her name was, Nuttall, I think. And she went to work in a bank. And we thought, good gracious, how common, working in a bank. I think she ended up being the manager of that branch. So she was all right. 3 of my friends went to medical school to be doctors. But I didn't finish the 6th form course. Got as far as the 2nd year. And I'd asked to do art in French, art, French and science. And no, I couldn't do that. Science was in a different group. I had to do history. And the sort of history we did there wasn't the sort of history you get on the telly now. It was just dates and, so boring with a boring teacher. So one day in the history class, I just sat there thinking, I can't be doing with this. I'm not going to do this. And anyway, I don't want to teach. I know what, I'll go to the art school. Just like that. So I went that afternoon and told the head teacher that I was leaving on Monday. What, she said? I said, yes, I'm going to the art school. Oh, she said, you've had an interview then? I said, no, I'm just going. She said, well, I really ought to let the head know that you're going to come. I'll get the art mistress to get a folder of your work together so that you can take it up and let him see it. It's not, oh, you can't possibly do that, my dear, we should be sorry to lose you. She couldn't get me out. And I was really quite a good girl, worked hard and behaved myself. So I had to go up with my little school uniform and my little bag of work. Stood outside the headmaster's office. 2 older boy students painting a mural on the wall. Are you going to have an interview then, though, they said. I said, yes. They said, you'll have to take all your clothes off. I said, oh dear. So I went in absolutely quaking at the knees, and of course it wasn't a bit. It
was a bit true.
That was my introduction. And he must have looked at my work, and he said, well, why do you want to come to the art school then? I said, because I want to be a dress designer. He said, oh no, there's no money in dress designing. This was Mary Quant era. Just the same year, the same age group, and no money in dress designing, he said. you better think about being an art teacher. You go through the course, you do your intermediate, you do your finals, and then you can go and teach art. I said, well, all right then. So that's how it started. So at the weekend, I cut up my gym slip and put a band round it and a little bit of brick round the waist and made it into a pretty dirndl skirt to go to art school in, no uniform. So that's how I started. And I had no intention of teaching, I was going to be an artist. There you go. But I suppose you've got to pay the bills, that's the trouble. And then when Mary Quant came along and made a lot of money, I was rather cross. Because there was no dress design course at that place. It was mainly specialised in painting and printmaking. They had a lovely litho press. I really liked the litho press. Haven't seen one since I left college. Anyway, so that's as far as I got. I know the same day I went home and told Mum and Dad, I said, I'm going to starting the art school on Monday, after the interview after starting the art school on Monday. Oh really? Said Mum? Said Dad. Thinking, oh well, she won't be going to work so soon then. And nothing else was said. So everything I've done has been my own decision.
Did you find also growing up having to share with people, and obviously your siblings having to share as well, did it have an effect on any of them where they they weren't really successful, or have they all achieved?
Oh no.
In some sense or another,
there's something in the genes, not to do with the background, because Maureen's teaching. Dennis was a qualified teacher until he was a PE teacher till he hurt his knees, and they wanted him to change course and do crafts and woodwork, which was good at. They said, no, I can't do PE, I'm not doing anything. So, but he qualified for that. Clifford could have gone to university, but he wasn't going to do any snooty intellectual work. He was going to do his City and Guilds. So he ended up running the nuclear power station up near Kendal. Mavis went through the commercial route, doing typing and shorthand and secretarial work, and made quite a good living out of working for the Australian Embassy and some mysterious guys. And the little youngest one, Morris, he was accepted for university, but unfortunately he died before he could go. They said he had typhoid, but they said he had blood poisoning, but I don't suppose it matters. Well, she waited too long to get the doctor and we couldn't do anything about it. So, yeah, everybody, I suppose we're all high achievers to come out of one little council house with not much money. And of course we're all retired now. Those of us that are left. Yeah. It's interesting.
And so your mum was a teacher as well?
She was a teacher until she married. Primary school. And she was, she was quite good, I think, actually. And the inspector's sort of comments that I've ever heard of were quite favourable. But you just had to go. You got engaged, you got married. In her, somewhere I have a little comment, is in the school thingies that you can look up online. And Miss Clark will be leaving in July to get married.
So you couldn't be married and be a teacher?
You couldn't, but when the war came, there suddenly became rather a shortage of teachers. But by the By the time they decided that you could go back to teaching, Mother had 4 children. And she said, no, I've got to look after my children, I can't come and teach as well. And I think she was a bit miffed about it, because she would have liked to have done it. And of course Dad was in the army for most of the war. And he was invalided out because he'd broken his leg and he'd had a bomb blown up near him somewhere, and he's invalided out for medical reasons, various obscure things. And then he went to work on the buses, I suppose in uniform again. He'd worked on the buses before the war, before he joined the army. But between wars, he'd been a regular soldier. He'd been to India and Africa and various places, because we used to have a photo of him in his pith helmet, so, you know, a tropical kit, which mysteriously disappeared when Mother moved. I think she threw it away when he left.
How old were you when he left?
Oh my goodness, when it was before Morris died, and he was 20, so that was, I can't remember how old he was. I think he just retired. I think he just retired. So he had his pension and his army pension, and he went to live with Auntie Alice. So Mother couldn't, when he died, Mother couldn't claim widow's pension because they weren't living together.
Oh.
So I don't know whether Auntie Alice would get it or not. So it was really quite sad, really, in a way, because he was one of these fathers who just went to work, came back, had his meals, went down to the working men's club, played darts or dominoes or whatever, came home, went to bed, got up, went to work. We never saw much of him. He once brought some friends home in the evening at about 10:30 or something, all very happy, and started playing honky tonk on the piano, because he could play anything on the piano, but he always used the black notes. So that meant nothing ever sounded wrong. It was his own honky tonk pub stuff. And went down in her night and said, "What do you think you're doing? Get out of my house," she said to these friends. So they all went out of the house, because this furious person. And she says to me, like, "Don't you ever do that again, otherwise you'll be out as well." Because she'd had the house put in her name when he went into the army in case anything happened to him, so she'd be sure of still having it. So after that it was her house. But it didn't seem to make any difference to us. We just got on with things. Because he'd been in the army, we were used to him being distant anyway. So I really can't think of anything else to tell you.
I can't think of much more. I think that's very helpful, thank you.
No, except being overcrowded didn't really affect us, because it was normal for most people in those days. The idea of a child having a bedroom all to themselves still seems to me to be an awful waste of space, because they don't learn to share.
Right.
What we did is we learned to share. We had little fights from time to time, but we just accepted sharing as being normal. You grew out of something, you passed it down to the next person. If you grew out of a toy, you handed it on to the next person. You didn't have anything that was yours, specifically. It was all ours, the family's.
Yeah. So it didn't hinder achievement for you as such, or your family. Everybody went on and progressed to...
It may very well had the opposite effect. It may have had the effect of being overachieving.
And you also said that the 3 of your friends went to medical school as well.
Yes, well,
Were they all from a similar sort of
no.
background?
This is one of the things that, looking back now, was a problem for me, although I didn't realise it. They were all fee-paying middle-class children. There were only 1 or 2 scholarship girls. First term I went there, everybody went up to the teacher and gave them a little brown envelope. And then she said, "Where's your..." "Oh no, you don't, do you?" They were paying their fees, and I was immediately singled out as the one girl in the class who didn't pay fees. I was the one who had the cheap gym slip that wouldn't stay pressed, whereas one of the doctor's daughters, I said, "How do you keep yours so beautifully pressed? It always looks nice." "Oh, that's easy," she said. "I've got 3 sets of uniform." My mind boggled. I said, "Really?" "Yeah, I wear one in the wardrobe, 1 at the cleaners." I thought I should be so lucky. But instead of, it was almost as if I was a fool for not having 3 sets of uniform. It didn't occur to me then to say, where do you get the coupons for 3 sets of uniform? Because it was all rationed in those days.
So they shouldn't have had 3 sets?
She shouldn't have had it, coupons for 3 sets. But 2 of the friends, their daddies were doctors. So you say no more. Grateful patients who couldn't pay their bills. And the other one was a farmer's daughter. My best friend. She's now an OBE or something. Anyway, she wasn't really my best friend because she was always making really good food. That's probably why she thought it was good, I was just a poor little relation. So that's had an effect on me, because it doesn't do much for your confidence when you think everybody's looking down at you and thinking, oh, she's only from these council houses and stuff like that. But then we survived. So we're going to art school was a liberation, because none of that mattered. Most of the other girls there, one's father owned a printing business, and the other one's father was a civil lord carpets, and the other one was headmaster of a big school. That's the only other girls in my group, and me. But it didn't matter, because it's just your work that mattered.
So that would be like late 1940s, 1950s?
I think 40, by that time the war had finished, 48, 49. I would be 16, 1932, 42, 48 to 49. Yeah, war was over by then.
Sure.
And of course that helped a lot, because of rationing set for special people. No one could have more than anybody else. Although some people managed to. Couldn't run a motor car during the war unless you were a doctor or an important official of some sort. You had to have blackouts. Nobody had much of anything, you see. Everything was collected for the war effort. Certain spots and pans, all sorts of things. So, have I gone on too long?
No, I think that's fine. I think we've got a few minutes left.
Have I covered everything?
Probably, I think. Yeah, thank you.
I don't want to see it.
No, it's fine. You don't have to.